what do you think? Is it time to change the law around assisted dying in this country? Joining us to talk about this is Dave Sowry, who supports a change in the law after his own wife went to Dignitas, and Paul Carroll, who'd signed up with Dignitas, but then a bit later on ripped up his membership after doing more research. I'm fascinated by this, Paul, because clearly you thought very carefully about signing up to Dignitas. You reflected on it and you signed the papers. That's quite a U-turn. What changed your mind?
It is indeed. 3 deaths in the family caused me to change my mind, which made me look at the whole thing completely differently.
How?
I think when I signed up, which was about 6 or 7 years ago, my partner's younger than me. We'd had that discussion, what would happen in years to come if you needed to look after me, although age shouldn't actually... Illness is no respecter of age, of course. But that was the way it went, and I suppose being organised people, having got our wills in order, we thought, oh, that's an insurance policy. It's like insuring the car. We'll tick the box, based really on thinking that if we'd signed up now, if we ever needed it, we'd be straight through without any complications. So it was sort of done and ticked. But as soon as I went through the experience of a very close aunt died, then my partner's mother-in-law died very within 11 months of being diagnosed with cancer. She was only 69, and we saw her through to the end with palliative care. And then my mother, who'd had vascular dementia for 10 years, survived COVID in the care home, and then thankfully died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 93. And the experience of witnessing all of those deaths right to the very end just made me reflect, because I could see the life force in them. They did not want to go, and we did not want to let them go. And we derived great comfort from those experiences.
That's so interesting, because that is in direct contrast to what Dame Esther Ransom told us. She also had witnessed 3 deaths. She witnessed the death of her beloved husband, she witnessed the death of her mother, and she witnessed the death of her pet dog, and said her dog had had the pain-free death.
Yes,
through being at the vet, which was denied to her mother and to her husband. Paul, you're in a very different situation from Dave.
Yes.
Because, Dave, you did accompany your partner, didn't you, to Dignitas?
I did accompany my wife, Christy, to Dignitas in September 2022.
And what was Christy's situation?
Her situation was she'd had MS for 30 years, and as she said in the letter that she wrote to her family and friends, which I posted on my return from Dignitas, she said, "I've had a very rich and full life, but my MS has been rapidly and frighteningly worsening of late, and I cannot go on. There's almost nothing left I can do for myself, and my only role in life would soon to be a full-time invalid. All this has meant giving up my rich and full life bit by bit. So please don't judge me harshly for making this decision to bring the curtain down."
So you were with her. How stressful is it, the reality of going to Dignitas with a dying relative and being with them as they effectively take their own life? It must be extraordinarily stressful.
It is an extraordinary experience, and I mean that in the true sense of the word extraordinary. It's unlike anything I've been through. It wasn't traumatic in any sense at all. I think for Christy, by that stage, she was very calm, she was very certain. I think she felt a great sense of relief. And, the last sort of half an hour or so was very profound, most profound experience of my life. So it wasn't distressing in that sense at all. No. It was obviously full of great sadness.
And no hesitation in either of you as the hours counted down to the moment?
No, it was very strange. When she applied about 9 months, she started the application process about 9 months before actually going to Switzerland. So it had been a long process. And I had wondered whether she would change her mind along the way and just feel this was an option that she could take up if necessary.
Dave, you back Dame Esther Ranson's call, don't you, for that to be an option here in the UK? And presumably that would have, if that had been the law, you would not have made that journey. What did you face when you came back?
Well, first of all, I think it's worth saying I do back the campaign that she's helped to reinforce, but I don't back her personal position. I'm more aligned with the campaign group My Death, My Decision, who want a slightly wider category of people to be involved, which would have included my wife Christie's situation. She had MS, so she didn't have a terminal illness.
Right.
But she comes under the category of what you might call intolerable suffering.
Yeah.
You were interviewed by the police when you got back.
Yeah.
And a little bit like Rebecca, Esther's daughter, who we spoke to earlier, you picked your words extremely carefully, and you say that's very important in a situation like yours. You stressed that you had accompanied your wife to Dignitas, you had not assisted her.
Yeah.
What was the nature of the interview from the police? Was it aggressive? Was it kindly? Was it...
I can't fault the police at all. To begin with, I reported myself in because I was aware of the Crown Prosecution Service guidelines, and one of the mitigating factors against prosecution
is if you go to the police.
Is if they are informed in a timely manner. And in any case, I wanted to get that issue out of the way. I didn't want to have it hanging over me. And in my naivety, I just assumed that it would be all right. And also, at that stage, it really wasn't my priority. It wasn't high in my thinking whether
I can imagine.
I almost didn't care. Yeah. I can't fault the police. They were, to begin with, bemused, I think, because this was not a situation the local police had to deal with. But the formal interview itself was, they weren't aggressive, they were
courteous.
And they didn't take any further action.
And they've said that there will be no further action. Which...
But you had to wait a while to hear that? A few weeks?
Yes, yes, it was a couple of weeks, and I did chase them, but I suspect they may have had other priorities.
Just before we let you go, so, Dave, you've outlined very sensitively your situation, and I'm so sorry, for your loss. That's at the heart of this and the reason that you're here. Paul, you remain concerned, presumably, that
very, very concerned.
People would take a way out when actually they can have a good death here, is essentially what you believe.
Indeed, and I worried on any legislation that comes in. When I was researching Shaking Hands with Elvis, I looked at all the countries around the world with assisted dying. The definition, the qualification criteria changes immediately. The number of deaths is staggering, really. Canada, 2016, introduced assisted dying. 4% of deaths in 2022 were down to assisted dying. That's projected to double because they're about to change the law to allow people with mental illnesses to qualify.
OK. All right, we have to leave it there.
Where does it stop when you bring in a law?
Yeah, the only reason we're stopping there is because we have the Minister on to address all of these concerns. We really appreciate your time, both of you. Thank you so much for being with us. We asked you if it is time to change the law around assisted dying, and in our poll, 90% of you said yes, 10% said no. Before we speak to Mel Stride, the Work and Pensions Minister, just to let you know, obviously, the very sensitive issues, and if you're affected, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helpline. So let's talk to Mel Stride then, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. Very good morning to you.